Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're diving into some absolutely unhinged stories from Reddit that will make you grateful for your own relatively normal problems. We've got catfishing schemes, family betrayals, workplace exploitation, and drama that crosses every possible line. So grab a snack, get comfortable, and let's jump right into the chaos. This first story involves a sister who went full detective mode when her boyfriend made a very bad decision at the company holiday party. I'm 26 years old, and I thought I had my life figured out. Good job, nice apartment, solid group of friends, the kind of stability that takes years to build. My younger sister Emma is 23, and we've always had this weird dynamic where I'm the responsible one and she's the free spirit who somehow always lands on her feet. About 8 months ago, Emma started dating this guy, Mike, who works in finance. Seemed decent enough when I met him. Polite, well-dressed, the type of guy who brings flowers on the first date. Emma was head over heels from day one, constantly gushing about how he was different from her usual type, how mature and stable he was. Now, here's where things get complicated. I work in marketing for a mid-sized tech company, and about 4 months into Emma's relationship with Mike, we hired a new client liaison. You can probably see where this is going. The new hire was Mike, same Mike, who was supposedly so in love with my sister that he was already talking about moving in together. At first, I figured it was just an awkward coincidence. I kept things professional, didn't mention Emma, and assumed he'd do the same. But Mike had other plans. Within 2 weeks of starting, he was finding excuses to stop by my desk, suggesting we grab coffee to discuss projects that honestly didn't require face-to-face meetings. I'm not stupid. I could tell he was interested, but I kept deflecting. Short responses, busy schedule, always bringing up how great it was that Emma had found someone so wonderful. I thought I was being clear without causing drama. Then came the company holiday party in December. Open bar, fancy venue, everyone letting loose after a stressful quarter. I was talking to some colleagues near the bar when Mike appeared next to me, clearly having had a few drinks. He starts going on about how beautiful I look, how he's been thinking about me, how he made a mistake getting serious with Emma so quickly. I told him he was drunk and needed to go home to his girlfriend. My sister, the person who's been planning their future together for months. That's when he dropped the bomb. He said Emma was sweet, but immature, that what he really wanted was someone with their life together, someone like me. Then he leaned in and tried to kiss me. I pushed him away hard enough that he stumbled backward into a cocktail table, made quite the scene. Half the party turned to stare. Drinks went flying, and Mike ended up with cranberry juice all down his white shirt. I grabbed my coat and left without saying goodbye to anyone. The next morning, Emma called me crying. Mike had come home drunk, reeking of alcohol and cranberry juice, and apparently decided the best course of action was to confess everything. But his version of everything was that I had been flirting with him for months, that I came on to him at the party, and that he rejected me. Emma was devastated, not just because her boyfriend had supposedly been pursued by her own sister, but because she felt like I had betrayed her trust. She wouldn't listen when I tried to explain what actually happened. In her mind, why would Mike lie about something like that? Word spread through our family fast. My mum called, demanding to know what I was thinking, trying to steal Emma's boyfriend. My dad sent me a text saying he was disappointed in my behavior. Even my grandmother, who usually stays out of family drama, left me a voicemail about how sisters should stick together. Meanwhile, at work, Mike was spinning his own narrative, telling people I had been inappropriate with him, that he was considering filing a complaint with HR. The whole office dynamic shifted overnight. Colleagues who used to chat with me at lunch started keeping their distance. My boss pulled me aside and suggested I might want to consider requesting a transfer to a different department. I felt completely trapped. My family thought I was a backstabbing sister. My co-workers thought I was unprofessional. And Mike was walking around playing the victim, while still dating Emma like nothing had happened. That's when I decided I needed proof. I started documenting everything. Screenshots of the work messages where Mike suggested unnecessary meetings, email timestamps showing how often he initiated contact. I even reached out to a colleague who had been standing near us during the holiday party incident and asked if they remembered what they saw. But I needed something more concrete, something that would show Emma exactly who she was dating. So I did something that probably makes me a terrible person. I created a fake dating profile. Used photos that were clearly me, but from angles where I looked different enough that Mike might not immediately recognize me if he came across the profile. Listed interests that I knew would appeal to him based on months of watching him try to impress me. It took exactly 3 days for him to match with me and send a message. The messages started innocent enough basic getting to know you questions, compliments about my photos, but within a week he was suggesting we meet up for drinks. When I said I was looking for something serious, not just casual dating, he assured me he was single and ready for a real relationship. Single. While he was literally living with my sister and talking about proposing, I kept the conversation going for 2 more weeks, building up enough evidence to show that Mike was actively pursuing other women while in a committed relationship with Emma. The messages got increasingly inappropriate. He sent photos of himself that were clearly taken in Emma's bathroom. He talked about how he was tired of dating someone who wasn't on his level professionally. The worst part was when he started comparing his current girlfriend to me, not knowing he was actually talking to me. He said Emma was too clingy, too emotional, that he needed someone more mature and independent, someone who understood ambition. I screenshot everything. Then I had to figure out how to tell Emma without revealing that I had catfished her boyfriend. I couldn't just show up with a fake dating profile and expect her to believe me. She already thought I was trying to sabotage her relationship. So I did something even more morally questionable. I told Emma I had seen Mike on a dating app while I was swiping through profiles myself. I said I wasn't sure if it was really him, but it looked like his photos and the profile said he was single. Emma demanded to see the profile. I showed her the screenshots on my phone, conveniently leaving out the parts where I was the one he'd been messaging. Then she asked if I could help her figure out if he was actually talking to other women. That's when I showed her the conversation screenshots, told her a friend of mine had matched with him, and sent me the messages because she recognized him from Emma's social media posts. Emma read through every single message. The lies about being single, the complaints about his current girlfriend, the suggestions for meeting up. Her face went through every emotion. Shock, hurt, anger, disgust. She confronted Mike that night. I wasn't there. But according to Emma, he tried to deny it at first, then claimed it was just harmless flirting, then finally admitted he had been feeling trapped in their relationship and was looking for a way out. Emma kicked him out immediately, changed the locks, blocked his number, told him never to contact her again. But here's where it gets complicated. The next week at work, Mike cornered me in the break room. He was furious, accusing me of sabotaging his relationship, saying he knew I had something to do with Emma finding out about the dating profile. I played dumb, told him I had no idea what he was talking about, that maybe he should have thought about the consequences before cheating on his girlfriend. That's when he threatened me. Said if I didn't stay out of his business, he would make sure everyone at the company knew exactly what kind of person I was, that he would destroy my reputation the same way I had destroyed his relationship. I looked him straight in the eye and told him to do his worst, that, unlike him, I hadn't actually done anything wrong. The next day, Mike submitted his resignation. No explanation, no 2 weeks' notice, just packed up his desk and left. Emma and I are slowly rebuilding our relationship. She apologized for not believing me about the holiday party incident, and I apologized for not handling the situation better from the beginning. We're getting there, but I still haven't told her about the fake dating profile. Part of me thinks she deserves to know the whole truth, and part of me thinks it would just hurt her more to know how elaborate my deception was, even if it was meant to protect her. My family has mostly come around, though there's still some awkwardness at gatherings. My mom keeps making comments about how family should communicate better, clearly aimed at me. At work, things have settled down, but I can tell some people still wonder what really happened between Mike and me. The official story is that he left for a better opportunity, but office gossip has a way of filling in the blanks. So, here I am wondering if I'm the arsehole for catfishing my sister's boyfriend to prove he was cheating on her. I exposed him for what he was, but I lied and manipulated the situation to do it. Emma is better off without him, but she still doesn't know the full extent of what I did to get rid of him. Part of me feels justified because Mike was the one who chose to cheat, who chose to lie, who chose to try to manipulate both Emma and me. All I did was give him the opportunity to show his true colours. But another part of me knows that creating a fake profile crosses a line, that lying to Emma about how I got the evidence makes me almost as bad as Mike. I keep telling myself that the ends justify the means, that protecting my sister from a cheating boyfriend was worth the deception. But late at night, when I'm lying in bed replaying everything that happened, I wonder if I became the villain in my own story. The worst part is that I'd probably do it again. If I saw Emma heading toward another Mike, another guy who was going to break her heart and turn our family against each other, I think I'd use whatever tools I had to protect her. Does that make me a good sister or a manipulative person who can't mind her own business? Mike got exactly what he deserved, but those catfishing secrets could still blow up later. This next one proves that some people really shouldn't become grandparents until they learn basic human decency. I'm 31 years old, and I thought I had a good relationship with my parents. Sure, they could be a little controlling sometimes, but they helped me through college, supported me when I was getting my business off the ground, and we talked on the phone at least twice a week. I figured that's what close families do. My wife Sarah and I have been married for 3 years, and we'd been trying to have kids for about 18 months when we finally got pregnant last spring. We were over the moon. Sarah had been tracking everything, taking vitamins, doing all the research, and when that test finally showed 2 lines, we both cried happy tears in our bathroom at 6 in the morning. We waited until the 12-week mark to start telling people. Called my parents first, then Sarah's family, then close friends. Everyone was thrilled. My mom immediately started planning, talking about converting their spare room into a nursery for when we visited. Buying baby clothes, the whole grandparent fantasy. Everything seemed perfect until Sarah's anatomy scan at 20 weeks. The ultrasound tech got quiet during the appointment, spent a long time looking at the screen, then excused herself to get the doctor. When the doctor came in, she explained that our baby had several markers for Down syndrome. She recommended we do an amniocentesis to confirm, but based on what she was seeing, she was fairly certain. Sarah and I sat in that sterile room holding hands while the doctor explained what this might mean, the potential health complications, the developmental delays, the reality that our child would need extra support throughout their life. She was careful not to influence our decision either way, just presented the facts and told us to take our time processing everything. We spent the next week researching, talking to specialists, reaching out to families who had children with Down syndrome. It was overwhelming and scary. But the more we learned, the more we realized this didn't change how much we wanted our baby. Yes, it would be challenging. Yes, our lives would look different than we'd imagined. But this was our child, and we were going to love them no matter what. The amniocentesis confirmed the diagnosis. Our daughter, we found out it was a girl, had Down syndrome. We decided to tell our families together, starting with my parents since they'd been the most excited about becoming grandparents. I called and asked if we could come over that evening to talk about the baby. My mum had dinner waiting when we arrived. She'd made Sarah's favourite lasagna and bought sparkling grape juice to celebrate. She kept talking about how she'd started crocheting baby blankets and how my dad was already looking at cribs online. We sat them down in the living room after dinner. I explained about the ultrasound, the additional testing, and the diagnosis. I tried to stay positive, mentioning all the research we'd done about children with Down syndrome living full, happy lives. The room went completely silent. My dad was the first to speak. He asked if we were sure if we'd gotten a second opinion, if the doctors could be wrong. When I confirmed that yes, we were certain, he leaned back in his chair and let out this long sigh. Then my mum asked a question that changed everything. So, what are you going to do about it? I didn't understand what she meant at first. I said we were going to prepare, maybe take some classes, connect with support groups, start researching early intervention programs. My mum shook her head. No, I mean, what are you going to do about the pregnancy? The implication hit me like a punch to the gut. Sarah's hand tightened around mine. I told my mum that we were going to continue the pregnancy, that we wanted this baby, regardless of the diagnosis. That's when things got ugly. My dad started talking about quality of life, about the burden we'd be placing on ourselves and our marriage. My mum brought up the financial costs, the strain on our relationship, how this would affect any future children we might have. They used words like difficult and realistic and responsible decision. They never said the word abortion directly, but they didn't have to. Their message was crystal clear. Sarah started crying. These were supposed to be our baby's grandparents, the people who would love and support our child unconditionally. Instead, they were suggesting we terminate the pregnancy because our daughter wouldn't be normal. I told them we'd made our decision and we hoped they would support us. My mum said, of course they'd support us, but they wanted us to really think about what we were choosing. The conversation ended awkwardly. We left earlier than planned, and the drive home was mostly silent, except for Sarah's occasional sniffles. Over the next few weeks, my parents kept bringing it up. Phone calls where my mum would mention articles she'd read about the challenges of raising special needs children. My dad would send me links to financial planning websites highlighting the costs of lifelong care. They framed it as concern, as wanting us to be prepared, but it felt like they were trying to wear us down, to convince us to change our minds while we still could. The breaking point came at 28 weeks. We were having a family barbecue at my parents' house. Sarah was showing now clearly pregnant, and she'd been excited to see everyone and talk about baby plans. My aunt was there with her kids, and she was gushing over Sarah's bump, asking about nursery themes and baby names. Sarah was glowing, talking about how we'd decided on Emma for our daughter's name. That's when my mum pulled my aunt aside. I couldn't hear the whole conversation, but I caught enough words like complications and difficult situation, and not what we expected. When my aunt came back over, the energy had completely shifted. She was still polite to Sarah, but the excitement was gone. Instead of asking about the baby, she started talking about the weather. I confronted my mum in the kitchen, asked her point blank what she'd said to my aunt. She got defensive, said she was just explaining the situation so people would know to be sensitive, that it wasn't fair to let everyone get excited about a baby that might not survive or might have serious health problems. I lost it, told her that Emma was going to be fine, that children with Down syndrome weren't tragedies, that her granddaughter deserved better than shame, and whispered conversations. My mum started crying, saying she was just trying to protect everyone from disappointment, that she loved us and wanted what was best for our family. I told her that what was best for our family was support, not sabotage. We left the barbecue early. Again, Sarah was quiet on the drive home, then finally said what we'd both been thinking. They're ashamed of her. They're ashamed of Emma, and she's not even born yet. That night, I made one of the hardest decisions of my life. I called my parents and told them that until they could accept and love Emma exactly as she was, they wouldn't be part of her life. My mom was devastated, said I was being cruel, that they were just trying to help, that they'd come around once the baby was born. I told her it was too late for that Sarah and I needed to protect our daughter from people who saw her as a burden or a mistake, even if those people were her grandparents. Emma was born healthy at 39 weeks. She's beautiful and perfect, And yes, she has Down syndrome. She's meeting her milestones. She smiles when she sees us, and she's brought more joy into our lives than I ever imagined possible. My parents have sent cards and gifts. They call occasionally asking if they can visit, promising they'll be different now. My mum sent a long letter apologizing, saying she was scared and didn't know how to handle the news, that she loves Emma and wants to be part of her life. But I can't forget those months of pressure and disappointment. I can't forget my mum pulling my aunt aside to whisper about our difficult situation. I can't forget the implication that our daughter would be better off not existing. Sarah thinks I'm being too harsh, that people can change and learn. She wants Emma to know her grandparents, even if they needed time to adjust their expectations. Part of me agrees. Part of me thinks I'm depriving Emma of relationships that could become meaningful. But another part of me remembers sitting in that living room, holding my pregnant wife's hand, while my parents essentially told us our baby wasn't worth keeping. I don't know if I'm protecting Emma or punishing my parents. I don't know if I'm being a good father or a stubborn son. All I know is that my daughter deserves to be loved unconditionally from day one, not tolerated after people get used to the idea of her. Those grandparents showed their true colours before their granddaughter was even born. This next story involves a mother-in-law who thought she could police someone else's wedding dress based on completely outdated ideas about purity. I'm 24 years old, and I've been planning my wedding for 8 months. My fiancé David and I are getting married next month, and everything has been going smoothly until this past weekend, when my future mother-in-law decided to lose her absolute mind. Linda has always been a little extra. She's one of those women who has opinions about everything and isn't shy about sharing them. But she raised David to be an amazing man, and she's always been kind to me. So, I figured her occasional boundary crossing was just part of accepting her son's choice in partner. The wedding planning process has been mostly collaborative. Linda offered to pay for the flowers, which was incredibly generous, and she's been involved in choosing the arrangements. We've had a few minor disagreements about colours and styles, but nothing major. Last month, Linda asked if she could see my wedding dress. I explained that it was being altered and wouldn't be ready for another few weeks, but I showed her pictures from when I tried it on at the boutique. It's a classic A-line dress, ivory satin with delicate lace sleeves and a chapel train. Nothing too revealing, nothing inappropriate, just elegant and timeless. I felt like a princess when I tried it on, and David nearly cried when he saw the photos. Linda looked at the pictures for a long time, then asked if I was sure this was the dress I wanted. I said, yes, I loved it, and David loved it too. She nodded and said it was beautiful, that I'd look lovely. I thought that was the end of it. Fast forward to this past Saturday. I was at my final dress fitting, making sure everything was perfect for the wedding. The seamstress had done an amazing job with the alterations, and the dress fit like it was made for me. I was standing on the platform in front of the three-way mirror, admiring how the lace caught the light when Linda walked into the boutique. I was surprised to see her since we hadn't planned to meet up. She said she was in the area and wanted to see how the alterations turned out. The boutique staff brought out a chair for her, and she sat down while I showed off the final result. I did a little spin, pointed out how perfectly the sleeves fit now, how the hem was exactly the right length with my shoes. Linda was quiet for a minute, then asked if we could have some privacy to talk. The seamstress and boutique manager stepped away, and Linda stood up from her chair. She walked around me slowly, like she was inspecting the dress from every angle. Then she said the words that are still echoing in my head. You know, I wore white to my wedding too. Back then it meant something. I didn't understand what she was getting at first. I asked her what she meant. Linda looked me straight in the eye and said, "White is for virgins, dear. Maybe you should consider ivory or champagne instead." The room went dead silent. I could feel my face burning with embarrassment and anger. I told Linda that my dress was ivory, not white, and that even if it was white, the colour of my wedding dress was none of her business. She shook her head and said she was just trying to help me avoid any awkwardness, that some of the older guests might have opinions about my choice to wear white when David and I had been living together for 2 years. I was so shocked that I couldn't even form words. This woman was standing in a bridal boutique in front of strangers, questioning my right to wear the dress I'd chosen based on my sexual history. Linda kept going. She said she wasn't judging me, that times had changed, but that I should think about what message I was sending, that maybe a nice blush or sage green would be more appropriate for someone in my situation. That's when I found my voice. I told Linda that my dress was perfect, that I wasn't changing anything, and that her opinion about my personal life was completely inappropriate. She got defensive, said she was just looking out for the family's reputation, that she didn't want people talking or making assumptions. I asked her exactly what people would be assuming and what that had to do with her. Linda's face got red. She said that, as David's mother, she had a right to be concerned about how the wedding would be perceived, that she'd invited friends and family members who had traditional values. I told her that anyone who had a problem with my dress could stay home. The boutique manager must have heard our voices getting louder because she came back over and asked if everything was okay. Linda immediately switched to her sweet grandmother voice and said everything was fine, that we were just discussing some minor details, but I was done pretending. I told the boutique manager that my future mother-in-law was suggesting I change my dress colour because she didn't think I had the right to wear ivory. The manager's eyes went wide. She looked between Linda and me, clearly uncomfortable with being in the middle of family drama. Linda tried to backtrack, saying there had been a misunderstanding, that she just wanted me to be happy with my choice. I said I was perfectly happy with my choice, and that I'd be even happier if she kept her opinions about my worthiness to wear certain colours to herself. Linda left the boutique without saying goodbye. I stayed for another hour, double-checking every detail of the dress with the seamstress, but the whole experience was ruined. Instead of feeling excited about my final fitting, I felt judged and humiliated. When I got home, David could tell something was wrong. I told him what happened and he was furious. He called his mother immediately and told her she owed me an apology. According to David, Linda said she'd been misunderstood, that she never meant to imply anything inappropriate, that she was just trying to help me make the best choice for our special day. David wasn't buying it. He told her that questioning my right to wear ivory was completely out of line, and that she needed to apologize and promise it wouldn't happen again. Linda apparently started crying, saying she felt like she was being attacked for caring about the wedding, that she'd only been trying to help, and now everyone was mad at her. David stood his ground. He said her help wasn't needed when it came to my dress, and that she needed to respect my choices. The next day, Linda sent me a text message apologizing for any misunderstanding. She said she thought my dress was beautiful, and that she was looking forward to seeing me wear it on our special day. But the apology felt hollow. She said she was sorry for the misunderstanding, not for what she actually did. She didn't acknowledge that questioning my right to wear ivory was inappropriate, just that I'd misunderstood her intentions. I showed the text to David, and he agreed that it wasn't really an apology. He called her again and asked her to clarify exactly what she was apologizing for. That's when Linda finally admitted that she shouldn't have commented on my dress choice and that my personal life was none of her business. But then she added that she hoped I understood she was just trying to protect me from judgment. It's like she can't help herself. Even when she's apologizing, she's still implying that there's something to judge me for. The wedding is in 3 weeks. Linda's still planning to attend, and she's still paying for the flowers. But the relationship feels different now. I can't shake the feeling that she sees me as not quite good enough for her son, not quite worthy of the traditional white dress and fairy tale wedding. David is caught in the middle. He's furious with his mother, but she's still his mother. He wants to protect me, but he also doesn't want to destroy his relationship with Linda over one terrible conversation. I keep going back and forth between wanting to uninvite her and wanting to prove her wrong by looking absolutely stunning in my ivory dress. Part of me wishes I'd just told her to mind her own business and walked away. But another part of me is glad this happened now, so I know exactly what kind of person I'm dealing with for the rest of my marriage. I'm wearing my ivory dress, and I'm going to look beautiful in it. But I'll never forget that my future mother-in-law thought I didn't deserve to. The audacity of policing someone's wedding dress, based on purity standards, is breathtaking. The next story proves that gambling addiction plus pathological lying equals marriage destruction. I'm 29 years old, and I've been married to my husband, Jake, for 5 years. We have what I thought was a solid relationship built on trust, communication, and shared goals. Jake works in construction management. I'm a nurse at the local hospital, and we've been saving up to buy our first house together. About 6 months ago, Jake started acting differently, not in an obvious way that would immediately raise red flags, but in small ways that accumulated over time. He'd come home from work later than usual, claiming he had to finish paperwork or deal with supplier issues. He'd take phone calls in the garage or outside, saying it was work-related drama he didn't want to burden me with. I trusted him completely, so I didn't think much of it. Jake had always been dedicated to his job, and construction projects can be unpredictable. Plus, he was still affectionate with me, still made time for our weekend date nights, still talked about our future plans. The first real sign something was wrong came when I noticed our joint savings account balance was lower than expected. We'd been putting away $800 a month for our house down payment, and when I checked the account in March, we were short about $3,000. When I asked Jake about it, he said there had been some unexpected expenses with his truck. Plus, he'd had to front some money for work supplies that would be reimbursed later. He seemed annoyed that I was questioning him about it, which was unusual since we normally discussed all major expenses together. I let it slide because Jake had never lied to me about money before, but I started paying closer attention to our finances. Over the next 2 months, more money went missing. Small amounts at first, then larger withdrawals that Jake explained away with increasingly elaborate stories. Equipment rentals, emergency repairs, advances he'd given to crew members who were struggling financially. By May, we were missing almost $8,000. That's when I decided to do some investigating. I started by calling Jake's company to ask about the reimbursements he'd mentioned. The office manager was confused, said there hadn't been any employee advances or equipment rentals that would require Jake to pay out of pocket. I felt sick. Jake was lying to me about where our money was going, and I had no idea why. I considered confronting him directly, but something held me back. Maybe it was intuition, or maybe it was the memory of how defensive he'd gotten when I asked about the first missing money. I decided I needed more information before having that conversation. So, I did something I never thought I'd do in my marriage. I started keeping track of Jake's schedule without telling him. I noted when he said he'd be working late, when he claimed to have weekend projects, when he took those mysterious phone calls. Then, I started spot-checking his stories. I'd drive by his job sites during lunch breaks, or call his office to ask if he was available. More often than not, Jake wasn't where he said he'd be. The pattern became clear pretty quickly. Jake was disappearing for hours at a time, multiple times a week, and lying about where he was going. I was terrified he was having an affair. The missing money, the secret phone calls, the unexplained absences. It all pointed to him spending our savings on another woman. But when I finally worked up the courage to follow him one evening, the truth was somehow worse than I'd imagined. Jake drove to a strip mall about 20 minutes from our house and parked outside a small storefront with tinted windows. The sign said, Lucky 7 Gaming, and there were neon lights in the windows, advertising poker and slot machines. I sat in my car and watched my husband walk into an underground casino. He stayed for 4 hours. When he came out, his shoulders were slumped, and he looked defeated. I followed him home at a distance, my mind racing with questions and anger and disbelief. Jake had been gambling away our house down payment, our future, our financial security, and he had been lying to my face about it for months. When I confronted him that night, he broke down completely. Through tears, he admitted that he'd started going to the casino a few months earlier when a coworker invited him to check it out. He said it was just supposed to be a one-time thing, something fun to blow off steam after stressful days at work. But he'd won $300 on his first visit, and that rush of easy money hooked him immediately. Jake told me he'd convinced himself he could win back more than he was spending, that he'd be able to replace the money he'd taken from our savings, and maybe even add to it. He said every time he lost, he'd think one more session would turn things around. He was in deep, not just the $8,000 from our joint account, but he'd maxed out 2 credit cards I didn't know about and borrowed money from his brother. All told, he was about $15,000 in debt. I was devastated, not just because of the money, though, that was crushing enough, but because Jake had looked me in the eye for months and lied. He'd let me believe we were building toward our shared goals while he was systematically destroying our financial future. Jake begged for forgiveness. He promised he'd stop gambling, that he'd get help, that he'd do whatever it took to earn back my trust. He said he'd been afraid to tell me because he knew how disappointed I'd be, and he kept thinking he could fix it before I found out. I told him I needed time to think. I spent that night at my sister's house trying to process everything. The next morning, Jake had already researched gamblers' anonymous meetings and made an appointment with a financial counselor. He'd also called his brother to confess about the loan and asked for help creating a repayment plan. He seemed genuinely remorseful and committed to making changes, but I couldn't shake the feeling that he was only sorry because he'd been caught. I agreed to try working through it, but with conditions. Jake had to attend GA meetings twice a week. We had to go to couples counseling, and I was taking over all our finances until he could prove he was trustworthy again. For the first month, things seemed to be improving. Jake was going to his meetings, participating actively in therapy, and being completely transparent about his whereabouts. He'd text me photos of where he was during his lunch breaks, call me when he left work. He even let me track his location on his phone. But then I found out he'd been lying about the extent of his gambling problem. I was organising our paperwork for the financial counsellor when I discovered bank statements for an account I didn't know existed. Jake had opened a separate checking account 6 months earlier and had been funneling money into it from his paychecks. That account showed gambling losses totaling over $30,000. Money that should have been going toward our mortgage, our groceries, our shared life. Money he'd hidden from me while I was working extra shifts at the hospital to boost our savings. When I confronted Jake with the statements, he initially tried to deny they were his. Then he claimed the account was old and he'd forgotten about it. Finally, he admitted the truth. He'd been hiding the full scope of his addiction because he didn't want to lose me. That's when I realized Jake wasn't just a gambling addict. He was a pathological liar who would say anything to avoid consequences. I told him I was done, that I couldn't build a life with someone who had spent months deceiving me about something so fundamental to our relationship. Jake fell apart. He said he'd do anything to save our marriage, that he'd never gamble again, that he'd spend the rest of his life making it up to me. But I was already mentally checked out. The man I'd married wouldn't have stolen from our joint account. The man I'd married wouldn't have looked me in the eye and lied for months. The man I'd married wouldn't have prioritized his addiction over our future together. I filed for divorce 2 weeks later. Jake has been trying to convince me to reconsider ever since. He's still going to GA meetings. He's gotten a second job to start paying back the debt. And he sent me countless texts apologizing and promising to change. But trust once broken this completely doesn't just magically repair itself. Even if Jake never gambles again, how will I ever believe him when he says he's working late? How will I ever feel secure in our financial decisions? How will I ever stop wondering what else he might be hiding from me? Some of our mutual friends think I'm being too harsh. They say addiction is a disease, that Jake deserves a chance to make amends, that our marriage vows included for better or worse. My family, on the other hand, thinks I should have left him the moment I found out about the gambling. I'm somewhere in the middle, wondering if I'm giving up too easily on someone I loved for 5 years, or if I'm finally standing up for myself after months of being manipulated and deceived. The divorce will be finalized next month. Jake will keep his debt, and I'll keep what's left of my sanity. I still love the man I thought I married, but that man never existed. The real Jake is someone who could lie to my face while stealing our future. And I can't spend the rest of my life waiting for him to become someone trustworthy. $30,000 in hidden gambling debt isn't a mistake. It's sustained deception that destroys the foundation of marriage. This final story involves wellness culture turning a reasonable mother into someone who puts her children's health at risk. I'm 33 years old, and I've been married to my wife Jessica for 7 years. We have 2 kids, ages 5 and 3, and up until recently, I thought we had a pretty solid co-parenting system worked out. Jessica stays home with the kids. I work full-time as a software engineer, and we split the evening and weekend responsibilities pretty evenly. The issue started about 4 months ago when Jessica began what she calls her wellness journey. It began innocently enough with her joining a yoga studio and buying organic groceries. I was supportive because she'd been feeling stressed and overwhelmed with the kids, and if yoga and healthier eating helped her feel better, I was all for it. But then the wellness journey expanded. Jessica started following various Instagram influencers who promoted natural living and alternative health practices. She began buying expensive supplements, essential oils, and organic everything. Our grocery bill doubled seemingly overnight. I expressed some concern about the spending, but Jessica assured me these were investments in our family's health. She said she was learning so much about toxins in everyday products and how we could protect our children by making better choices. Then, she started making changes to the kids' routines without discussing it with me first. I came home from work one day to find Jessica had thrown away all of our kids' regular shampoo, soap, and toothpaste. She'd replaced everything with expensive organic alternatives that cost 3 times as much. When I asked her about it, she explained that she'd learned about the harmful chemicals in conventional personal care products. She showed me articles and Instagram posts about parabens and sulfates and how they could disrupt hormones and cause developmental issues. I said I appreciated her research, but I wished she'd talked to me before making such a big change and expense. Jessica got defensive and said she was just trying to protect our children, that she couldn't believe I'd rather save money than keep our kids safe. That became the pattern. Jessica would learn about some new health concern from her online communities and immediately implement changes to our household without any discussion. Regular laundry detergent was replaced with an organic version that cost 4 times as much. She threw away our cleaning supplies and bought expensive all-natural alternatives. The kids' diets changed dramatically. No more regular snacks or treats. Everything had to be organic, non-GMO, and free from artificial ingredients. Their lunchboxes went from normal kid food to elaborate arrangements of organic fruits, vegetables, and specialty items that cost a fortune. Our 5-year-old started complaining that her lunch was weird compared to her classmates. She asked why she couldn't have the same crackers and fruit snacks as everyone else. Jessica told her that other parents didn't care about their children's health as much as we did. That comment bothered me, but when I brought it up with Jessica, she said she was just trying to teach our daughter to make healthy choices. She didn't understand why I had a problem with that. The breaking point came when Jessica decided to take the kids off their regular vitamins and give them a special supplement regimen she'd learned about online. She bought hundreds of dollars worth of specialty vitamins, probiotics, and herbal supplements. She created a complex daily routine where the kids had to take multiple pills and liquid supplements at specific times. Our 3-year-old hated the taste of most of the supplements and would cry every morning when Jessica tried to give them to him. Our 5-year-old complained that her stomach hurt after taking all the pills. When I suggested maybe we should check with their pediatrician before giving them so many supplements, Jessica got angry. She said doctors were part of the problem, that they were trained to push pharmaceuticals instead of addressing root causes with natural solutions. I was shocked. Jessica had never expressed anti-medical sentiments before. She'd always been reasonable about healthcare decisions, but now she was questioning everything from our pediatrician's advice to the kids' vaccination schedule. She joined online groups that reinforced these beliefs and provided her with articles and testimonials that supported her new worldview. I tried to have rational conversations with her about balancing natural approaches with conventional medicine, but Jessica saw any pushback as me not caring about our children's well-being. The final straw came when our 3-year-old developed an ear infection. Instead of taking him to the doctor, Jessica wanted to treat it with essential oils and herbal remedies she'd learned about online. I insisted we see the pediatrician. Our son was in pain, running a fever, and clearly needed medical attention. Jessica reluctantly agreed, but spent the entire appointment questioning the doctor's recommendations and asking about natural alternatives. When the doctor prescribed antibiotics, Jessica refused to fill the prescription. She said she wanted to try natural treatments first, that antibiotics would damage our son's gut microbiome and weaken his immune system. I was furious. Our child was suffering, and Jessica was prioritizing her wellness ideology over his immediate health needs. That night, while Jessica was at her yoga class, I took our son to urgent care and filled the antibiotic prescription. Within 24 hours, his fever broke, and he was feeling much better. When Jessica found out what I'd done, she was livid. She accused me of going behind her back, of not respecting her role as the primary caregiver, of not caring about the long-term consequences of pumping our child full of chemicals. I told her I cared more about our son's immediate health than her internet research. That seemed to be the wrong thing to say. Jessica said I was being dismissive of everything she'd learned, that I wasn't taking her concerns seriously, that she felt like she was fighting for our children's health all alone. We've been in this standoff for weeks now. Jessica continues to follow her strict wellness protocols for herself and tries to impose them on the kids when I'm not around. I've started keeping regular food and products hidden in my office, so the kids can have normal snacks and basic necessities. Our kids are caught in the middle. They don't understand why Mummy and Daddy disagree about what they can eat or what vitamins they have to take. Our 5-year-old has started asking if she's sick because Mummy gives her so much medicine. Jessica has suggested we see a naturopathic doctor who can help us find a middle ground. I've suggested we see a marriage counselor who can help us communicate better about parenting decisions. Neither of us has budged. I love my wife, but I feel like she's been taken in by a community that profits from fear-mongering about everyday products and medical care. She's spending thousands of dollars on supplements and specialty items while questioning proven medical treatments. But Jessica sees me as someone who doesn't care about our family's health, who's willing to expose our children to toxins and chemicals because I'm too lazy or cheap to make better choices. We're at an impasse, and I don't know how to bridge this gap without one of us completely abandoning our position. The scary part is that Jessica's convictions are getting stronger, not weaker. The online communities she's part of reinforce her beliefs and provide explanations for any pushback she encounters. They tell her that resistance from family members is normal, that people who haven't awakened to these truths will try to hold her back. I'm worried about what happens next. Will Jessica start refusing medical care for the kids entirely? Will she pull them out of school because she doesn't trust the environment? Will our marriage survive this fundamental disagreement about how to raise our children? I never thought I'd be in a position where I'd have to choose between supporting my wife and protecting my kids from her well-intentioned but potentially harmful decisions. Right now, I'm doing both, and it's exhausting. Sometimes, protecting your kids means protecting them from the other parent's misguided attempts to help. Thanks for sticking with me through all these wild family sagas and relationship disasters. If you made it this far through the chaos, you're definitely my kind of person. The internet never runs out of people making questionable life choices, and I'll be here to share them with you. I'll see you in the next one.